Good morning. Welcome back to Morning at 10 TV. My name is Malaki Vilaodera. Remember, we are on the hashtag Morning at 10 TV. That's on Twitter. You can also drop in your comments at NTV Uganda. That's on Facebook and YouTube. And of course, I'm seeing your comments on the, you actually want updates on the Member of Parliament, Chadundo East, Mr. Robert Chagulanyi. We do not have any developments so far. And as you know, we have members of Parliament who are still being detained by police. And these names are Mr. Francis Zake, who is the Mitiana Municipality Member of Parliament. We also have Robert Chagulanyi, who is the Chadundo East Member of Parliament. We also have Gerald Karuhanga, who is the Ntungambo Municipality Member of Parliament. We also have Paul Mwiru, Jinja Municipality Member of Parliament, together with other over 20, people who were arrested on Monday by police with regards to the chaos that erupted in Arua Municipality. Remember, Arua Municipality still goes to the polls today, and actually the polls are underway. They were supposed, according to the Electoral Commission, they were supposed to start at 7 a.m. and they will end at 4 p.m. and thereafter now the tallying process will commence. Of course, we have your back. We will keep you updated with any developments with that regard. But right about now, we do have another discussion. Andrew Chamagero was on ground and we're having a discussion about cyber harassment. And it now has a particular, kind of title that has been put to it, and this is revenge porn. And so what exactly is this and how can we curb it? Now in studios to talk about that is a human rights lawyer, Mr. George Musisi. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Mala, for having me.
Thank you so much. Now we've been having this trend where nude photos are being, leaked into the public domain, especially now in this era where we have access to the internet. What does the law provide? What does the law say with regards to this?
Thank you. In the recent past, we've had a number of developments in this regard in terms of our legislation. And in 2010, we had the Computer Misuse Act enacted by Parliament and assented to by the President. And 3 years later, in 2014, we had the Anti-Pornography Act, also put in place by and it was enacted by Parliament. These are relatively new legislations. We've not had a lot of trials on them in terms of litigation, but they do, part of the reason why they enacted is partly to curb that kind of misuse and cyber harassment. Yes.
What does these two laws pretty much entail? What do they say? Because most of the times, and I'll bring you up to speed with an incident that happened a few years back, whereby a local musician, Madame Desire Luzinda, we saw her photos being leaked as a result of Love Gone Sour, where the spouse said, for me to revenge, this is what I'll do, and he actually did it. But we also saw the government coming out to threaten to arrest her and convict her. So what provisions are there in these two laws? Do we say that now the law is convicting the victim, actually incriminating the victim as opposed to incriminating the person who leaked the photos?
Well, first of all, from the point of view of the Constitution, which is overall, it provides for a right to privacy, that every person has a right to privacy.
Right.
When you look at the Anti-Pornography Act, which is 2014 legislation, it criminalizes any form of pornography, and it has a liberal understanding of pornography to include any form of publication of any form of pictures or material meant to elicit sexual desires. So in that case, if you're looking at it from the point of victim and leaker point of view, the Anti-Pornography Act doesn't seem to distinguish between the two. It creates some sort of strict liability kind of position that the moment we see material which we deem to be as pornographic and it's published, because it describes describes publication as any form of print.
Yes.
That means that if you take a picture in your phone, if you send it, all those other publications. So from the point of view of that act, even the person who has taken the picture, who in this case would be the victim, has already offended the act, the Anti-Pornography Act. So the case you've cited, that means that the moment we see pictures out there, the first suspect will be the person who appears in the pictures. That is from the point of view of the law. The first suspect will be the person whose pictures we see. What that happens is that police is supposed to strengthen, because at the point of taking the statements, that is the pretrial process kicking off to investigate whether you've indeed committed this crime. That is when you, the victim, you're supposed to tell that, yes, I took these pictures, but possibly they were leaked. It was in the privacy of my bedroom and they were leaked by so and so.
Right.
So that person then be joined onto. But the first, in terms of the law, it doesn't, because if you look at the law now, it doesn't preclude a victim or a person who leaks.
Do we say that then the law has loopholes to it? Because I'm thinking most of the times these victims actually are not the people who take these photos. They just innocently maybe pose and the photos are taken. So do we say that the law has loopholes if it goes fast for the victim instead of the leaker?
Yes, you may call them loopholes, because from the point of view from the human rights point of view, you'd look at it that a person has a right to do whatever they want in their privacy. That is from the human rights point of view. That is why I started with the Constitution, that what the Constitution provides for, that if I have a right to privacy, I can do whatever I want in my privacy. So from that point of view, because this law didn't seem to look at it to distinguish between a victim and a leaker. And possibly that is what future amendments should be looking at.
Right.
Because the law came from the point of view of saying that there's a lot of pornographic material out there and we need to control. In fact, if you look at the long title of this law, the main purpose is to control. So I think because they looked at the need to create a control, they did not look at some of these dynamics which came in later. Like, for instance, actually some they may need to be in place victim measures where the person is actually an innocent party despite the fact that he's appearing in the pictures. So yes, I'll look at it that way, that maybe future amendments should be looking at some of these issues, that some people are actually innocent victims.
Yes. Because
from where it is now, it seems to criminalize any form of material. As long as you appear there, you've already published, and that means that you are guilty as well.
Especially now that we are in the area of, era of internet access, and all our phones have cameras, and so there are cases, and this is stories that we see on a day-to-day basis as journalists, cases whereby innocent parties, especially women, women are the ones who most of the times are victims of this. They feel like, fine, I trust my partner, so they get to that space where it's private. But then if you have a perversive partner, would have maybe, just put a camera in a place that you didn't know and maybe just film the entire session or act, and so at the end of the day, that is leaked. So I think the law needs to be amended. Don't you feel so? And don't you feel it needs to happen so fast? Yes,
from that point of view, yes, we need to look at amendments. But of course, Mala, where we're coming from, like I noted that we are coming from a place where there was no legislation at all.
Yes, yes.
And of course, I think they largely looked at the terms of control. But then the scenario you've created, where actually the picture is created without your consent, that is even different. That is you're a victim,
right,
by excellence. You're a victim who didn't even know about the publication of these pictures. But from a human rights point of view, yes, we may need to be looking at amendments of that law. Of course, the biggest challenge we've met is that we've not had a lot of litigation under this law. That even the law enforcers, the principal duty bearers, who are the police, many of them are ignorant about this law.
Why are we saying that?
We are seeing it from the case of what is happening, from the few cases that have been litigated under this law.
Why is it happening? Why? I mean, the main law enforcers in the country, the police, why do we have them not aware of this particular law, or the enforcement of this law?
The biggest challenge is that many times when laws come out, there is not a corresponding deliberate action by government to take the law enforcers through some of these law developments. That police find themselves in a tight spot of learning on the job. Even if you look at the Computer Misuse Act, there are so many police officers who actually don't know what the law provides for, or if they do know, how do they investigate. So we need to bring our officers up to speed with the developments in the law. Because if you look at some of the few cases that have come out, we looked at the case of a UCU student,
yes,
who was charged under both of these laws before the Uganda Road Magistrates Court. And of course, as she was trying to explain herself before the magistrate, of course, initially they had entered a plea of guilty because they thought her admission was an admission of the fact. But later on, when it actually transpired that actually she was also a victim. So if police was better equipped to handle to know this, it should have been handled at police level, that in the course of doing your investigations, you're able to ascertain that actually this person was actually a victim. Let's look for another suspect who should be charged, who published these pictures. Yes. So from that point of view, I think we need our officers need to go through some sort of trainings in regards to some of these, because these are recent developments and most of them are not up to speed with these developments in the legislation.
Right. You said that these two laws were actually, you know, put in place 2014 and 2010 respectively, and the cases, the litigants are so low. Why are we having this? Is it that the public is not aware that once this happens, once you're a victim, this is the route as to which you can follow to report the cases? Do we have that gap, or we also have gaps in the judicial process? What exactly is it?
We have gaps in both, because every time there is a new legislation, at least many times the judiciary takes deliberate steps to when finding permits. It's finding permits because, of course, you know, it also has its issues of child funding. But when finding permits, it takes deliberate steps to take its officers through what this law provides for. That is not done usually at police levels. They don't take criminal investigative officers through deliberate steps of taking them through these laws. So one, we are having low people. We have a low number of people who have been brought under court for this, because one, first of all, the public doesn't know. But then two, even those who know, because of the nature of their crimes, our system is largely adversarial, that a person who has been a victim of that, they would rather keep quiet than face the ordeal of going through police statements after statement. Then you go to court and recount. It's only a few, sometimes courts when, because ordinarily courts are supposed to be a public place, but sometimes when these matters are sensitive, the judicial officers need to create privacy, private sessions. So largely it's the general public which doesn't know, but also the enforcement officers, who are the police, don't know these laws. They don't know these laws. But then again, you mentioned about the victims issue, that whereas the law right now criminalizes even the victim, which is wrong and unfair, a victim actually can also seek civil remedies. Because this criminal law, these laws are all no create criminal sanctions. That if the suspect is convicted, they'll only be sentenced to a fine or a court or a prison sentence. But actually, a victim can also seek damages in defamation, because what they have to prove is that this person published without my consent pictures to a third party, and actually that has lowered my reputation amongst right-thinking members of society. So the person can also seek civil remedies from the victim. From the victim. From the person who leaked the picture.
But of course there's that, and you say that number one, we also have the victims not aware that there's a law in place and they can actually, you know, seek civil remedies. But most of the times when we interact with the citizens, what they say is they're afraid of court processes. Because number one, they think that it's expensive. In such cases, is it expensive? Because this pretty much literally is a human rights case. Is it expensive to file such a case?
It may not be expensive in terms of filing, the initial filing fees. It becomes expensive in terms of the time you expend in the court process, because our court process, like I've said, it's adversarial, and then it's bogged down by a lot of cases. That the system is slow. That if I'm a victim of revenge porn, as you termed it, and this matter goes to court, and then after 3, 4, 5 months, 6 months, we're still going to court, the magistrate is not there, after the magistrate is not there, the magistrate has been transferred, that they're going through a different kind of ordeal than what they've already gone through in the public.
It's draining.
It's draining emotionally. So in that case, it becomes expensive, that a person would rather not go through the ordeal again, because you've already been subjected to public ridicule, and you are going through another form of torment, going to court several times without bringing close to this a logical conclusion to this matter. So it becomes emotionally draining, and that's why many victims, they would rather not go through that at all.
You are a lawyer. Why are we having that state of affairs?
There are many factors, but largely there are systemic administrative challenges in our court systems, because of course, there are very, very few magistrates, and even the few are bogged down with lots of cases. And then even we have very poor investigation mechanisms. So even when it comes before magistrate, it has been poorly investigated by police. So we have strong systemic challenges that affect, and possibly in future, I think even the judiciary may need to create a special mechanism for such sexual cases. Because, for instance, if you look at the Anti-Pornography Act, it creates a registry of porn offenders.
Yes.
Like, and I think this was borrowed from other countries where they create a register of sexual offenders. But we've seen the courts responding to, for instance, recently the judiciary launched a special court at Buganda Road to cater for utility offenders. So maybe the judiciary needs to look at how to fast track sexual offenders and create some sort of special system or special unit to specifically fast track sexual offenders and porn offenders. Possibly this could be one of the moves to save victims from going through a double ordeal.
Okay.
Yes.
But as a lawyer, what would you advise then, before we have all those amendments put into place? Of course, it will take time, if not forever. What can we do as citizens just to ensure that we don't get into that space, to safeguard ourselves from such crimes?
Well, the first thing I would advise is that if you can, avoid publishing the pictures.
Taking the pictures.
Yes, avoid publishing, because of course, like I said before, we mentioned that before the law is changed, publishing the pictures in itself is already a crime, as per what the Anti-Pornography Act.
Is it publishing the pictures or taking the pictures?
Well, the law defines actually if you take it amounts to publication. If you take the picture,
yes,
it amounts to publication.
But most of the times, these pictures are just taken and then maybe shared to trusted partners. So does it mean that then, especially now that women are the majority, victims, does it mean that then we need to keep off taking pictures of ourselves?
Of course, I would love to imagine that these pictures are taken in a moment of excitement and in a moment of privacy and trust. So, of course, what happens is that it's a breach of trust. That for a person to leak your pictures, it's a breach of trust.
Right.
And of course, this time it has consequences on your person. So what we could do in the meantime, first of all, is public awareness. Public awareness in the first place that you should be very cautious. We should exercise extreme caution when we are sharing. Of course, trust can always be breached, because human beings will always breach trust.
Right.
It could be in business, it could be in social relationships. So but also where to seek help from. But then again, I'm looking at it from the enforcer's point of view as well, that our law enforcers, especially the police, the criminal investigations department, they need to be up to speed with the law. They need to emphasize their investigation mechanisms to differentiate that this person actually was a victim.
Yes.
Because if I could narrate, because it's a public experience, the issue of the UCU student was charged. If police had properly taken the statements and exhausted its investigation mechanisms, actually she wouldn't have appeared in court as a suspect. Possibly she would have been she would have been led to bring the person who leaked. But what we are seeing, that because police wants a soft target, it will only charge the person who has appeared in the pictures, and then of course it goes ahead to crash at the court system. Yeah. Yes.
We were having a case just the other day whereby a certain, gadget manufacturing company was actually, brought to the courts of law, because apparently what was happening is you would take pictures of yourself or whatever pictures, because, the phone is yours. But at the end of the day, without your consent and without you triggering the sending, option of the photos, you'd find your photos on the internet. So that was, a case that was actually brought, and I think it's still under investigations, and the company is trying to relook that. Of course, they were saying it's a technical hitch. There are a few loopholes here and there. But in such a case, if you find your photos that were actually leaked and you had nothing to do with it, anything to do with it, what does the law provide for that, for me to get justice?
You would seek civil remedies from the company, because that was a technical default on the part of the company. So in the case where you actually have no participation whatsoever in the publication of the pictures or the leaking, you'd seek civil remedies and damages from the person who is responsible for that.
Right.
Whether it's a technical default or not, the company, the buck stops somewhere. So the company would have to pay would have to pay you in damages.
Okay.
Yes.
You also mentioned the process of, reporting such cases. Here, of course, in the country, it's totally different. So if someone is watching us today and they feel like now with this information, they really want to file a case, what's the process? Where do they start?
Of course, like I mentioned, there are two issues. One is to look at the criminal part of it, where a person will be sanctioned in a criminal way. That's the cases which go to police. But of course, the biggest weakness we have there is that, which I've already enumerated, that we have poor investigation mechanisms, and the case is not largely within your control, because it's within the control of the police and subsequently the Director of Public Prosecutions. But then you as an individual can also straight go to court and file a civil case.
You can straight go to court?
Yes, you can straight go to court. You may get a lawyer and file a civil case where you'll be seeking damages for one, defamation, and of course even these damages will include the emotional. Of course, sometimes it's not easy to be compensated in terms of monetary terms, but of course court will try to restitute you through the emotional trauma you've gone through, and of course any other damages you may have suffered. You may be a public figure and you lose your contract because so all those damages, have to take all that into consideration.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
So you may seek civil damages in a civil court.
Can you give us just a rough figure of the cost implication to that?
To filing a case?
Yes.
Of course, to filing a case, court filing fees differ depending on what you are claiming.
What's the range in such a case?
They may not exceed 200,000. May not exceed 200,000 in terms of filing fees. Yes, it may be much lower even. It may be much lower. But of course, if you are claiming that I lost a job and then I was supposed to earn 600 million in my contract, then the court filing fees may go up depending on what you are claiming.
Ah, yes. Depending on what you're claiming.
It's a percentage of what you're claiming, yes.
Okay, all right. Yeah. And of course, at the end, towards the end of you just finishing up with that particular, process and you gaining justice, pretty much on a lower side, how much would one, part with in terms of costs? In terms of costs, it may even be 20,000 in terms of filing fees. But of course then... To the end? To get in judgment? Towards the conclusion, no. Towards the conclusion. Because like I mentioned, you may have to ferry witnesses to court. You may have to go to court several times. You use transport. You may have to instruct a lawyer. A good one is very expensive. So in terms of actual costs, you may even... the minimum you may spend like 5 million if you have to instruct a lawyer. Wow. Wow.
But the beauty about it is that a civil court takes into consideration all that. So even the costs that you may have expended on that matter will be reimbursed eventually if you're successful.
All right.
Yes.
But as human rights lawyers, do you have that provision whereby you just help out victims that pretty much cannot afford cost-wise the process? Do you have such provisions? Of course, there are lawyers who offer pro bono assistance in this country. There are several of them who offer legal aid and pro bono assistance in this country. Yes. So in that case, you may get assistance from them as well, for those who offer pro bono assistance. Okay. Yes. All right. Thank you so much for coming in studios. It is a matter that you're welcome. We truly needed to shed some light into that regard, because it's something that happens on a day-to-day basis, and most of these cases just go, like you said, unreported, and actually cases not filed, and so it is important. Thank you so much for shedding light on that. Thank you, Mala. That has been it for Morning at 10 TV. Remember, Arua municipality goes to the polls today. It will be a by-election to replace the slain Member of Parliament, Mr. Ibrahim Abiriga. So we will keep you up to date with all the developments that has to do with that particular exercise that will take place in Arua municipality. Morning at 10 TV still continues. My name is Malaki Villa Odera. Tech Note is up next.